and don't be scared to like communicate. Like some people, I've seen a lot of planners where they'd rather just keep their head down and just kind of, float, get your paycheck, do what you're told to do. I didn't get to where I am by doing what I'm told to do all the time.
4 Degrees to the Streets is designed to empower anyone curious about places and spaces, not just persons with professional degrees or backgrounds. Here we will cover a host of topics, including transportation, health, housing, and the environment through the lens of racism, classism, and sexism, and give listeners the tools they need to overcome institutional barriers. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the 4 Degrees Pod, and tune in every other Tuesday where Nimo and Jas keep it 4 degrees to the streets. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 4 Degrees to the Streets podcast. Wow, season 4 is moving along. It is spring, it is allergy season, and that means we are approaching the end. I think I was looking at, Apple does your photos from a year ago. And so this morning I saw photos that we took when we were recording with Nina Idamudia. And it's, wow, just like that, we're coming up on the end. But how are you doing today, Jasmine?
Spring is sprung. I started getting my yoga teacher certification this weekend. And so my mind is exhausted, my body is exhausted. But I'm going to take this chance to say that it's hard being a student. I think once you start working and then you have to go into a class again and like learn something new, whether you're like getting a certification for something in your field or getting a certification for something that's like a hobby to you, like being a student again and like starting from like, I don't know what any of this is. I don't know what any of this means. It's super frustrating, but so I had a bit of moment of frustration yesterday with myself, but I'm up this morning, I'm going back to class, I'm not quitting. And so it's hard to be a student. That's all I'm gonna say.
No, I love that. It is certainly humbling to have those moments to be a learner and to be a beginner. Yeah, it's definitely like, when you get into the groove of life, you forget. But I am so proud of you. I can't wait. I think I was texting you. You see, I spelled it RYT. I was like, real official. It's coming. It's going to be in the bio. You're going to be taking bookings very soon. So I'm excited for you. Um, just some March announcements. It is still Women's History Month. We've seen a lot of great content from our fellow planning content brands, all the girlies celebrating Women's History Month. We'll share some of where we've been this month. Jasmine was on the APA Women's History Month and talking about women entrepreneurs in planning. I believe that should be available on the APA's website, but we'll link it in the show notes. And then when this episode comes out on Tuesday, there will still be time to register for Smart Growth America's Equity Summit that's taking place this Wednesday, the 27th, and Thursday, the 28th, in Washington, D.C. So looking forward to that as well. I will be moderating a panel on advocacy in government. And so without further ado, I'm excited for today's episode. We love talking about professionalism in planning, career growth as Black planners. And I will let Jasmine take us away to introduce our guest.
March announcements. We're recording this on a Sunday. March announcements made me feel like I was in church. I was like, "Ooh, the bulletin. What's going on this month in March?" So I'm so happy to have Kamau Asalam on our podcast today. Kamau and I went to Georgia Tech together and got our master's in city and regional planning there, and I'm going to read his bio. Kamau Salam serves as the Assistant Director of Planning and Zoning for Henry County. As Assistant Director of Planning and Zoning, Kamau manages short and long-range planning, as well as zoning compliance. Kamau joined Henry County in July of 2020 as Planner 2. Prior to joining Henry County, Kamau interned for the City of East Point, Georgia department, where he assisted in the planning and zoning, as well as GIS. Since joining Henry County Planning and Zoning, Kamau has participated in and facilitated Henry County's 2045 Comprehensive Plan, zoning code updates, housing affordability measures, and diversification of Henry County's housing stock. Kamau has a bachelor's degree in history with a minor in geography from Tennessee State University in Nashville, Tennessee, and a master of city and regional planning from the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta, Georgia. The South got something to say. That's all I could say. That's what I know.
Yeah, definitely. The South definitely always has something to say, and we loud and braggadocious about it. I appreciate y'all letting me crash your podcast on Women's History Month too. I got a lot of strong Black women in my family. I wouldn't be here without them. So I'm gonna go ahead and represent them well on this podcast and not act a fool. But I really do appreciate y'all having me.
We are working hard to bring the voices of Black male planners to the show. And we'll get into what it's like to be a Black male planner in this industry. And so we thank you for acknowledging us on Women's History Month, but we are so happy to have the male point of view here. So we're going to get started in the interview. Just the first question is, just tell us about yourself. We read your bio, but tell us some things that aren't in your bio. Tell us things about places that you lived, anything that shaped your educational professional background, and your why. Why are you in planning? Why are you with Henry County? Kind of why, what is your mission statement in planning?
Got you. So I'm Kamau Al-Salam, as introduced by the lovely Jasmine, and um, currently I work for Henry County Planning and Zoning as the assistant director there. I went to school, went to high school at Tri-Cities High School, home of Outcast. And I lived in that neighborhood of my high school, and I still live in this neighborhood. And then I got a full ride to Tennessee State University playing my trumpet, um, where I spent from 2014 to December of 2017, earning my degree in history and geography. And then I started at Georgia Tech in the fall of 2018, wrapped up right at the start of COVID. So that was fun. And I've been at Henry County ever since. I spent some time at East Point while I was in earning my master's at Georgia Tech. Getting my hands in the planning field. And I've been at Henry County ever since the summer of 2020. And you wanted to know my why? Shoot, I think my whole philosophy is like waking up every day and putting your best foot forward. And good things tend to happen because I do that. And I have a strong family base, and that's contributed to my privilege, just living a good life. But I want to shape our world and our communities with a little more thought and precision, as well as a little more flexibility for communities. And every day I'm learning something new in Henry County and how to educate people on how we do planning, which I think is super important. So that's my why. Um, I love being in the community, and I want the regular man to be spoken for.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that definitely connects a lot to Jasmine and I's mission for doing this podcast and educating on all levels, across generations, across genders, across backgrounds. So I'd love to hear that you get to do that in your current work. But tell us a little bit more about Henry County, Georgia. What are some demographics? Put the listening audience in the census tracts in the in the
Yeah,
zones of
yeah.
your community.
So Henry County is a county just south of Fulton County, maybe 25-minute drive from the airport, 20-minute drive from the airport. It shares a border with Clayton County to the west. And right now, the population of Henry County is about 250,000 people. By 2040, it'll grow to 350,000. And Henry County is a example of a true demographic flip. In the 90s, Henry County was majority white. It might have been 60% white, and the majority of the minority was black. But it's since flipped. Right now, it's 50% black, 33% white. What we're seeing is uh, a lot of those projects that were in Atlanta, when the housing vouchers came out and they raised those projects for the Olympics, a lot of people came down into Clayton County and Henry County. And that's why you see cities like Stockbridge. But also, Henry County is also starting to see a lot of Black wealth as well, in the Eagles Landing area and spreading throughout the county. So um, I think Metro Atlanta in general is diversifying like crazy. And Henry County is um, there's no difference there in Henry County. It looks a lot like the other metro counties in Atlanta.
In your bio, it mentions that you were instrumental in the Henry County 2045 comprehensive plan. So we've talked about the comp plans on this podcast in previous episodes, but just give an overview for our listeners of what is a comprehensive plan, and then some of the things I know it mentioned like housing affordability and stuff like that, but some of the kind of big picture planning agendas of Henry County as they look towards 2045.
Right. So a comprehensive plan is a roadmap or a guide, a policy guide that communities have to do in our MSA. And most places have a comprehensive plan, but it's a guide, 30 years, that basically says like we're here now. What do we expect our county, our city, to look like down the road? So your future land use map is a part of that, but it's so much more. People usually hang on the future land use map because that's usually what drives development, or is a factor in driving development. But the comprehensive plan looks at your demographics, it looks at your income, it looks at your housing affordability, and it says, how can we take this plan and truly use it to make the county or the city better. Everybody doesn't follow their comprehensive plan, which is a shame. And some comprehensive plans don't actually align with the true intentions of the community. And that can be dangerous when it's not done honestly. But that's what a comprehensive plan is. And right now, Henry County is growing like crazy. We have a lot of multifamily units coming along, and people aren't happy about that. We have a lot of single family units coming along, and people aren't happy about that. And we have a lot of commercial coming along, and some people aren't happy about that either. So, you got to deal with the NIMBYs every day. But people are moving to Georgia. People are moving to Metro Atlanta. We need People need places to lay their heads and things to do and places to work, and communities. So you have to cater to that. Part of the issue with our infrastructure in Georgia and other places as well is that, especially in the South, is that you're so afraid of the growth that you try to fight it instead of planning to your advantage. And I think Henry County is now at the point where we have the right leadership in place to where we're saying, like, we're not going to hide from it anymore. We're going to embrace it. We're going to make it the absolute best we can, to build communities. And that's really what my goal has been in Henry County, is kind of cleaning up the mistakes of past administrations, past planners. And planning is a powerful tool. We've seen it destroy communities. We've seen it raise communities up. And my goal is to plan for the people that are being born today, in Henry County and just in Metro Atlanta in general. So,
And in your words, how would you describe the reasons behind the growth, and knowing those reasons, how does that impact how you do decision making in Henry County?
yeah, so I think they tout this all the time, that Georgia is like the best place to do business in the country. I don't know how true that is, but you can't argue that we're growing like crazy and people want to be here. Um, we have a lot of New Yorkers that come down here and Californians that come here, and everybody isn't happy about that. But there seems to be, I really think, from a practical standpoint, Georgia just has really nice weather, and we have kind of security there. Whereas as we ramp up in climate change, a lot of places are under threat, and Georgia seems to be a very moderate place. So I think weather has something to do with population. And it's, in my opinion, Atlanta's just a cool place to be. And there's a lot of wealth to go around, especially for minorities that may not, like other cities, may not have that same kind of those same metrics. So I think the growth is because people have more opportunities here. A lot of industry is coming here. The film industry is going crazy. We have data centers popping up all over the place. Like, it's opportunity here. And we're so car centric that people just keep sprawling out. And that's another thing. Georgia has no natural barriers. So we're just gonna keep sprawling until somebody smartens up and says to stop.
The Atlanta Regional Commission is the regional planning organization for Metro Atlanta. So Metro Atlanta is 21 counties. And so I just quickly pulled it up because I was curious about the growth. And so Henry County is in the top 10 of the Metro Atlanta growth counties. Fulton is the county where Atlanta is. That one is like the biggest, obviously. But out of 21 counties, Henry falls at number 8. So that is a lot of growth coming to Henry County. And to Kamau's point around Atlanta not having any growth boundaries, it's showing that like the metro is 21 counties. Like that's huge. Most metro areas do not have that many counties. And the lack of growth boundaries is something that we talked about in Georgia Tech all the time. Of like, what's going to stop Atlanta from growing? Like, when you're in New York, right, you have the water, which like you got to get across the water. You have Long Island, like there's an end to Long Island, like you can't go past it. You're in California, you got the ocean on one side, you got the mountains on the other. You're in Denver, you got mountains on one side. So like there's a physical restriction of how much we can grow. Georgia, Atlanta's in the middle of Georgia. Like, let's just keep going. However far we could go, let's just keep going. Something that you talked about, cars, so I'm gonna have to ask you, transit. Talk to me about, and it can be your own point of view. Doesn't have to be like where Henry County stands on this, but like, what are your thoughts around what Metro Atlanta is doing in terms of transit for the region and like accommodating that growth in a means that's not just cars, and that could be micro transit options, bike lanes, and stuff like that also.
So I'm gonna brag on Henry County just a little bit in our transit department. We do have our own internal transit system, and it's new, it's a baby, but we just started a micro transit system in the city of McDonough, and they are working really hard to increase our transit and to get our budget right for transit because it's clear that it's needed, right? Traffic, I don't know if you've ever been to Henry County, like going down 75, and you come to a complete abrupt stop. That's Henry County. That's when it happens. When you get past South Lake Mall and you just come to that hard stop, that's Henry County, and that's because we have a direct line to the freight yards in Savannah, so we have a lot of trucks. So right now they're working on a truck lane, but regardless, like transit, I think Atlanta would be in a much better place if they took it seriously in the 60s and the 70s. And education is a part of that. Every time MARTA tries to do something big and they put it on a referendum, it fails because people are afraid. But people can only be afraid if, like, the only way to dispel fear is through education. And I say that, to people all the time when I'm explaining why we do things, why we're planning things in their community. And you may not like it, but at least if you're educated, we can get some of the ignorance out of the way about different subjects. So I wish that all of America's transit was more like Japan. And I mean, we're huge. We're much bigger than Japan and England and France, but we're definitely behind when it comes to our infrastructure and transit. And I think if we had better transit, there would be more opportunity for people to get out of their hoods and to really flourish. So I want to see when we're 50 and 60, maybe Atlanta connects. We have this, I know the federal government has been working really hard to kind of have cities connect through transit and different, high speed rails. Uh, Hopefully, we live long enough to see it. We're all pretty young now. Maybe our grandkids will see it, but I'm hoping that we continue to educate people. And I really do think, I don't mean to be long winded, but I really do think that it's going to, the only way things happen in America on a big policy level is bad things have to happen first. We're very reactionary. Something bad is going to happen. Something's going to be out of everyone's control, and then it'll get the policymakers to kick in gear.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that international perspective. I think that's important to remember, especially when thinking about transportation. I attended the Transforming Transportation Conference this past week with the World Bank, and I was at the World Bank. I'm not gonna say like I was with the World Bank, but they hosted it. And it was, it was nice to see the international investments that are being made in the recognition of it being made in different countries. But we all know the struggle to get the investment for our own transportation infrastructure in the U.S. And it is often a fight. So you've held positions with the city of East Point and then multiple roles within Henry County. How would you say that planning at the city level differs from the county level?
So I will I will speak to East Point and Henry County specifically, because every place is different. So on a broad level, like planning for a county, counties don't always handle super special projects. They kind of just keep the train on the tracks. Cities usually handle the big light tech projects, the big projects that are, economic drivers. Um, Henry County is not like that. We handle huge projects, and we do it on purpose. The relationship between the Henry County and the cities in Henry County haven't always been great, and they kind of work in silos. We're trying to get out of that, and it's unfortunate. But the city of East Point is different in that it's much smaller, but it's an established, very old city. It's one of the first suburbs, if you can even call it that, of Atlanta. And I used to have. It seems like East Point has a lot of trouble getting things across the finish line because there's so many hands in the pot for such a small population, and they have at large reps and city council members. So I think there's like a 9-person council for 30,000, 40,000 people, and it's like when you have so many chiefs, it's really hard to get stuff done. And I think that's a big issue in East Point. I'll say this: you're only as strong as the person that's in charge, right? And I think Henry County has a really good leadership model from the top, and it trickles down to the bottom. I'm not just saying that because I work there, but I look at it and I am proud of what the county manager Sherry Matthews, who's a black woman, has accomplished. And she started as a planner in Henry County and worked her way all the way up to county management, and she's really good at what she does. But when she became county manager, there were a lot of bad habits that she had to clean up, and she still is working on cleaning those up. But Henry County is in a much better place now, and it makes it easy to work there when you have a clear and concise goal, as a unit. Um, and county planning, I'll say like it's just more broad than cities get to focus in on these smaller areas and really have big special projects. And I would say that's the biggest difference. It's just when you have so much more land to cover, you can't do as specified projects.
Yeah, and I think working in a county setting, you have the different, so you have the cities, you have the unincorporated parts of the county. And so planning in a city area, right? If you planning in East Point, planning in the city of Atlanta, it's like it's mostly urban, like it's urban all
Hmm.
around here. We
Yeah.
deal with these urban issues. But when you're in a county, it's like, well, how do we balance maintaining some of the more rural and natural elements of our county, this whole land
Hmm.
area, and balance them with the growth that we're seeing in McDonough versus something that we're seeing further out. And so it's like, it's like somewhere between regional planning where you're like thinking about it from a super high level
Yeah.
and city planning where you're like you're saying talking about like individual land parcels. So it's an interesting balance. I think it's a cool place to be.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up like rural parts because Henry County has a lot of rural land. And one of the things we consciously did in our comp plan update was we created these character areas, and inside of the character areas, there are land uses that are appropriate in those character areas.
You're under 30, you're a Black man, you're the assistant director of planning and zoning for a county with, like you mentioned, nearly 250,000 people and growing. That is huge. It's part of the reason why we wanted you to be on the show to have this conversation with you today. And so, talk to us about your progress from planner two to assistant director. There's a couple questions in here, so take your time as you get through them. But like, how did you succeed in navigating through that environment as a younger person and as a younger Black professional? Um, and then thinking about what skills did you enhance or improve upon to help you accomplish your goal and get you where you are today?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I well, let me start with my beginnings at Henry County. So when I was about to graduate um from Georgia Tech, I actually was working in East Point under Black City Manager Fred Gardner, and this is why connections are important. So Fred came down to the planning department one day and said, "Hey man, like I know you're about to graduate. Um, where have you been looking?" And I had put in an application in Henry County maybe 2 weeks prior, and I said, "Hey, like I applied to Henry County." And he used to be the city manager in McDonough, and he is the city manager in Stockbridge now. He's not no longer at East Point. And he said, "Hey, look, I'm gonna make a call." 10 minutes later, I got a call to interview for a planner one position. So I went down to Henry County, I interviewed, and then they called me back and they said, "Hey, you're underqualified. I mean, you're overqualified for planner one. We're going to make you a planner two." I said, "Shoot, I'll take it." Um, so I went to Henry County, and this was maybe when she's 24, 25, around that age. And I started to build connections, which I think is really important. Like I learned the code, I learned the technical aspects of being a planner, and I learned a lot of that at East Point too. But Henry County, I learned how to be a little more political, and how, because you kind of have to be political if you want to be a successful planner. You got to know how to convince people to do things, and you have to be personable. And I think that personality has allowed me to be in certain rooms, which has given people confidence in me. So Henry County leadership is a very good mix of black and white, and we have some other races in there as well. So like my director is a black man, from Alabama A&M. Um, so like I think that having black leadership means confidence in black people, to because like I'm black leadership. I can be confident that I can get this young professional further than even I. So like I've gotten that confidence from the county management and from my director. But basically I just had to really build connections. And I think the biggest skill I learned, honestly, is learning how to communicate with Black women. And I learned that from my mom and my four sisters. And that's been the biggest tool, honestly, to me, is like learning how to communicate respectfully and listening, and like a true respect and reverence for that got has gotten me a long way. So I just know how to talk to different kinds of people, and everybody doesn't know how to do that.
There's already so few Black planners, and then I feel like there's even fewer Black male planners. So I'm curious how you discovered planning, how you knew you wanted to study it.
So when I was at Tennessee State getting my undergraduate degree, I was studying geography and history. My geography professor, he was very instrumental in kind of my matriculation through Tennessee State. And he just gave me the idea. He was like, "Hey, we have an urban planning like discipline at TSU. It's not really a program, but they teach a couple of classes. Um, and you should go talk to this, professor, because I think this is something you may be good at rather than just doing like a geography or history. Planning will give you more flexibility for where, the places you can go." So I ended up talking to that particular professor, and I came out of Tennessee State in 2017, fall 2017. So I graduated in December, and I just applied to one school. I just applied to Georgia Tech, like, look, let me just try something. And they accepted me.
Thank you for sharing that, and for also recognizing the not surprised that you recognized it, but just like the impact of Black women in the workplace. I see it in my own workplace. I see it in myself. Do I be overworked a little? Is it fair? Conversation for a different day. So definitely resonated, and you were preaching once again on a Sunday morning about communication. And so on that same vein of skills that you learned, what advice would you have for someone who's listening to the show, someone who may be coming out of their, schooling in their early 20s, as you were mentioning how you entered Henry County? What advice would you have for them who, if they're interested in working in local government?
I would say be personable. Don't don't shy away from the hard conversations. Like break through the wall by communicating properly. And like one of the craziest things, well, not even crazy. It's real simple. It's human, right? But one of the things I've learned at Henry County is that like in the very inflammatory political climate we live in, especially since Donald Trump became president, really since Obama became president, because that's how it kind of started. Um, we're way more alike with the person to the right or the left of me that actually live in my community than any of these politicians that make these policies. So I think like you need to learn how to communicate with different types of people effectively. Um, and don't be scared to like be yourself and don't be scared to like communicate. Like some people, I've seen a lot of planners where they'd rather just keep their head down and just kind of, float, get your paycheck, do what you're told to do. I didn't get to where I am by doing what I'm told to do all the time. Or saying like, oh well, that's so and so, so you need to approach them like this. Like I approach them as Kamau, and that usually like people respect the realness and like being a person. Because at the end of the day, we're all just people.
Where do you feel like they can look to have some of those examples of communicating better, or resources, or ways to find examples essentially of where they can find that successful communication?
So I think that you have to. Ooh, that's a loaded question. I think you have to like get out in your own community and shake hands and meet people. And that's one of the things I really like as a planner. And I tell people this all the time. Like people, when you're in the planning environment, you're going to be challenged by people's thoughts and ideas. And they may not always be like the educated thought, but it's just how they feel. And there's merit to that. I always say, like, listen, if I'm talking to other planners, like stop running away from the NIMBYs and go towards them. Like, go talk to them and educate them on why you're doing what you're doing. And they may not like it, but at least they're more educated because of it. And then usually when I do that, when that happens, I'll say, hey, after the board meeting, I know you didn't like that decision. Let me talk to you over here for a minute. Here's my phone number. Call my office so we can chat about why we came to some of these decisions and recommendations. Usually I build a connection with them and they know who to call when they have questions. Rather than running to the politician, they start running to me instead, where I can properly explain why decisions are being made, the reason why they're being made. So like you really just have to like go towards the fire. Like you got to jump in it. You have to. Can't be afraid to jump in that fire. It's interesting, Nemo. You asked earlier, like there being a lack of black planners, and then especially of black men in planning. I'm running into that problem where, and it's not a problem because I love the women that I've hired at Henry County, but I'm running into the issue where like it's really hard to find a male planner, period. Because people want to like be engineers or they want to be builders. Like men like to get their hands dirty, I guess. Um, but like the issue with black planning is that I think it's only maybe one or two like HBCUs that have like legit urban planning programs, and like one of them is Alabama A&M, and we get a lot of looks from Alabama A&M, and they're usually women, which is not a problem because like they work really well. But that's part of the issue is we just don't have that discipline. It's a tough discipline to find in most schools anyway. It's just underrated.
Yeah, and even the, like you said, the where someone's interest comes from in planning, if they are wanting to go to a planning school that's housed in like the architecture department,
Hmm.
or and then they may end up going a design route. And even I find that the Blaustein being housed in the public policy, even a lot of the planners, the male planners that I'm thinking of that I graduated around my time, they've gone into like heavy data analysis, like really quantitative type of, I
Yeah,
can't think of the word.
and
They've
that's
gone into those paths,
yeah, and that's
even
why
if they
like
have planning.
the that's why like I appreciate Georgia Tech for like the stamp on my name But everything I learned in like community planning, like came from working in planning. Like it's more than just these structures. It's community too, and they don't teach you that until you actually get your hands in the mud.
Yeah, that's valid. While we're here, let's just stay here real quick. It's the HBCU part is interesting because how is the obscurity of planning leading to like creating more inequity in the
Yeah,
discipline, or like not allowing inequity in the discipline to be broken down because the people who are being negatively impacted by planning decisions don't even know that those are planning decisions.
yeah, and it comes to a certain point where it's like I think that racism is so ingrained in like the blood work of America that we're people may not even be um actively or purposefully participating in these things, but it's built into the infrastructure of us so much that we're doing these things every day, not knowing why we're doing them, which leads to more inequity. I mean, they put the interstate system raised through like every black neighborhood in every major city, and they purposely winded the interstate. It would make most sense for interstates to be straight, right? They purposely winded them around these neighborhoods because it's less impactful on the white communities. So like I don't know if we do it on purpose anymore. We as in planning in general, like policy, and it may be intentional. I don't know, but I do know that like it's there for certain.
There's a lot of undoing that has to be done in
Yeah,
planning before we can even have basic conversations about equity and equality, because there's so much disadvantage on
yeah,
minority communities existing that if we start from today try to fix it, you have to undo a lot of things. In Veronica Davis's book Inclusive Transportation, she talks about just that, like planners focusing too heavily on the technical and like
mm,
wanting to just get their task done, get that comp plan done, get the analysis done, do the zoning update or whatever. And it's like you're missing the communication with the people that you serve.
All right. So something we like to do with our guests, specifically guests who also have an urban planning background, is ask some questions. We don't give much context. So just, share whatever comes to mind, whatever your raw thoughts are. We acknowledge as a government employee, views are your own. So I'll say that for your for your protection too. And yeah, we're just gonna run through the list. So the first topic is historic preservation, and go.
yeah. So historic preservation. I look at all of the brutal modern buildings we have in Atlanta now, and it kind of makes me vomit because we have no style anymore as a country. Um, we don't even have porches anymore in a lot of these neighborhoods. So I think historic preservation should be taken more seriously, and I think that we should actually go back and learn how to adopt some of those old architectural styles that used to give us these beautiful buildings that had
And that is
personality.
time.
The next one is artificial intelligence, AI, and government oversight.
Yeah, AI kind of scares me, but it's the reality we live in now. So again, like what we talking about earlier, instead of being scared and pushing away from something, just dive into it and make it the best you can. It's not going nowhere.
All right, you got a couple seconds left on that one. Um, this one I will give some context. When looking at the Henry County demographics, it seems like there's about equal distribution among ages. So what is your take on multi-generational planning?
Yeah, so that's something that I think everybody kind of struggles with. Um, I think that zoning can be a little more flexible and allowing smaller houses and even tighter knit communities to allow for multi-generational aging. And Henry County has a real issue with keeping the young people in the county. So that's something that we try to tackle every day by having more affordability and more housing choices and flexibility.
So this is a big one. We probably do it on every rapid fire round, but climate change.
Yeah. scary again, as most things are. Um, Climate change has to be manifested on a national scale. Um, us taking our recycling out isn't stopping Taylor Swift from flying her big ass jet uh to Kansas City, New York, or you know what I'm saying, like New York to New Jersey. So like, um, our little people, we ain't really causing the climate change. It's not really us. So it's got to come from a national scale, in my opinion.
I was off mute and trying so hard not to laugh.
Trails.
So Henry County actually has a trails plan and a master parks plan. And I think that they are a health benefit, and I think they connect communities. And when we live in such a car centric era of time, I think that people just need to move their legs. And like America's fat and obese, so like we we could use a little more nature in our lives to break up the monotony of the gray and all the pavement.
So I'm gonna ask this one. I know we said we're only gonna do one
Hmm.
each, but I know you come out and I know how big of an Atlanta sports fan you are. So I gotta ask for your rapid fire. Sports stadiums used as anchors in urban planning.
Jesus Christ. Um, I think that we have. Well, let me base it off of this. So Mercedes-Benz Stadium is smack dab in the hood, um, and people argue about the church that it got raised over. But I think that it offers a lot of, like, the Arthur Blank Foundation offers a lot more than just sports. So I think their charitable is giving is important. Now, Truist Park, it's a planning nightmare because it's no walkability, it's no transit. It's nice to look at, it's nice to drink there, but Jesus Christ, it's they made it the fortress for a reason, I guess.
Thank you for that. We appreciate all of your answers. I know those topics were all over the place, but I think definitely gave listeners more of an insight to the wisdom that you have garnered in your career, in your experience, in I think as young planners and earlier stages in our professional, people are like, oh, you did this in a short amount of time. And it's like, it's short, but it's also long. Like you've seen the things, you've done the things, you've experienced it. And so we're so grateful for your time and grateful to have you on the show and share your experience with listeners and all of your accomplishments.
No, thank you for having me. It's been wonderful talking to y'all. Y'all have some great personalities, and communication is huge to me. So I really appreciate y'all professionalism and just doing this. And I'll make sure that I blast the podcast in general everywhere because I think this is great, and the questions y'all are asking are very thought provoking and deep. So I really appreciate y'all doing the work on this side just to educate people, which I think is our most important duty as planners, to be honest.
Well, we appreciate that. Thanks for coming on the show with us. We appreciate your time this morning. If people want to reach out to you, where can they do so if you want to share?
Yeah, so you can reach out to I guess you can reach out to my county information since I'm on a planner role. My email is ksalam, so KSALAAM at co.henry.ga.us. I know it's a mouthful. But you can go back, pause it. I'm sure they'll put it on the blurb.
Thank you. And for folks listening, we drop episodes every other Tuesday. And you can find us on Instagram and X at the 4 Degrees Pod.
I'm gonna switch it up. I'm not gonna say peace out, y'all, because we got come out on the show. So I'm gonna do Lil Jon. So Nemo, come on, I'm gonna need you guys to engage me here. Can I get a what?
What?
Can I get a what?
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 Can I get a
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Peace
shout out
out,
Lil Jon,
y'all.
man. That's the homie.